morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where one of the biggest changes to ever hit the film industry appears to be imminent. What makes it appear that way? Well, basically, Kevin Tsujihara has said it's imminent when he recently threw down the gauntlet when it comes to shortening the window between a film's theatrical release and its availability for streaming. He said, "We're having some very encouraging talks with exhibitors, but we're going to do it whether they're on board or not." Ooh, them's fighting words, but clearly a fight that Kevin Tsujihara feels he can win, which shows that studios, or at least Warner Brothers, feels that exhibitors are no longer a vital part of their business strategy. Oh, as I said, big changes. All right, so let's walk it back a little bit to where this public brouhaha began. It's been a fight that's been brewing behind the scenes for quite some time as people change the way they watch content. That's why Disney's so interested in buying a digital streaming service. First, they were interested in maybe Twitter. They'll tweet you their latest movie, I guess. Now they're looking, rumor has it, at Netflix, and everyone feels maybe there might be a Disney-Apple merger someday in the cards. I guess if they can get this window shortened, that might speed up the timetable as well. Warner Brothers is already set. Maybe that's what's spurring Kevin Tsujihara's comments because of that AT&T acquisition. We'll see if it goes through. It still is pending government approval, but they would have a fantastic main line into your phone in your living room with that if that merger, or and this isn't a merger, this is a full-out purchase, if that goes through. I guess that's why Kevin Tsujihara, come to think of it, is feeling pretty bold. But this started in the trades, and again in the public, when the new guard at Fox, because Rupert Murdoch resigned, his sons have taken over. Well, not resigned, he retired, basically. Although if you're not a fan of Murdoch, you could say that he resigned. But anyway, his sons said publicly that they wanted to see that window shortened. And then the motion picture exhibitor group slapped them on the wrist and were like, "You're new to the film industry, you don't really get it, that's okay, but there's no way in hell we're shortening that window." The 90-day window protects exhibitors in a world where content is, the way it's being viewed changes. By saying that you have to wait 3 months to see a film, it gives you more of an incentive to pay that higher price. But don't kid yourself. If you have a shortened streaming window before it gets to streaming, that initial round of streaming will be more costly than what it is now 3 months later. But I think that the exhibitors realize that their business is in danger, and so that 90-day window has been a safeguard. But as Kevin Tsujihara said, you better get on board because this train's a leaving the station, and it's got AT&T, is its fuel. And so I think that Warner Brothers joining the discussion, they can't be quite so easily dismissed. And Kevin Tsujihara has said that they are, talking to exhibitors, and the exhibitors are at least at the negotiating table. Particularly, perhaps, again, after that AT&T merger. Maybe when that headline came out, exhibitors were like, "Oh crap, we better make a deal before we're totally cut out." Kevin Tsujihara went on to elaborate as to what he's talking about, saying that the most important thing is to drive interest in our product. He talked about Fantastic Beasts, for example. And he was like, "I don't care how people see Fantastic Beasts. I just want to make sure they see it." He said, "I got a lot of stuff to push that's beyond the movie itself. The movie is just the first domino. I've got video games. I've got merchandise. I have theme park attractions. And I just need to make sure that people are interested in the brand so that all of that can do well." The movie has always been the first domino, even for later on streaming. If it does really well at the box office theatrically, people become more interested in streaming it later on down the line. But maybe perhaps because people watch things on streaming and they've seen what's happened to music and music videos and television and how quickly people consume stuff digitally, they're like, well, obviously movie ticket sales are stagnant, or they're not on fire, let's say, right? I think that's a fair statement. And also we've talked before about how few people actually go to the movies. There are 300 million people in the United States, I think that's a conservative estimate, and only about a third of them go to the movies, right? So imagine how many more people they could get if you could just, push a button on your phone or on your TV set and you could watch the latest release, particularly for smaller fare. But as you can see by Kevin Tsujihara's comments, he's interested in this for the blockbusters as well. He also said that when it comes to theatrical releases, China is what their main concern is right now. He's saying that's an opportunity for money that has not been seen in quite some time and probably won't be for some time in the future. So that's why you can see they're focusing so hard on China. But he also said one of the reasons they're interested in shortening this window is that pirating is, it's happening anyway. Let's at least get a legit. And some people said that, if you shorten the window, that'll make pirating easier. I think pirating seems to be pretty easy already, right? I think the only thing holding pirating back is people going, do I want to, get my computer in trouble? Also, I don't know if you know this might have happened to some of you. If you pirate material, they can sometimes trace your IP address and they can take away your internet service. I've been at a number of offices where they've been like, who's downloading illegal content because they're threatening to take away our internet? You better stop it. So, and they do end up stopping it because they've never taken away the internet where I've worked. But interesting indeed. I've also seen more and more PR departments say, for instance, when they talked about Disney's Moana, the PR department said, yeah, it was a real successful campaign for us because we were able to get the right answer to, should I see this in the theater? So you can see that PR, the studio PR departments are already, trying to tackle that, fatal question for their industry. And they're like, well, wouldn't it be great if we could take that question off the table and just see it however you can? I don't think that movie theaters will ever go away, but as we've discussed before, I think they're going to have to go more upmarket. And for Pete's sake, just take away people's cell phones. Find a way. Alamo Drafthouse, I think, will end up being the leader in this situation because they have a very good policy about if you're on your phone, they'll kick you out of the theater and you can't come back. I don't know how they remember you. And also, I think they tend to be in smaller locales, and I think that sometimes in the big cities it could be difficult. Although we've gotten along with reserved seating, and that had a lot of problems in New York at first, so it can be done. But the biggest problem with movie theaters these days is people on their phones, people talking, just disturbing the experience. And I think people would love to see these big movies on the big screen, but at home they can guarantee a pleasant experience and a clean experience too. The problems are so obvious. So I think it'll all shake out, but I'm curious to what you think of the idea of being able to watch Fantastic Beasts, say, just a month after it comes out on streaming. And how much would you be willing to pay for that? All right, so that's the first story of the day. The second two stories of the day focus on awards season, which is picking up some serious momentum. The lists of the year are starting to come out, and the Golden Globe nominations are on December 12th. As if enough isn't happening that week with Rogue One being released. All the big trailers are going to hit. They couldn't have done the nominations like next week when it's a slow news week. All right, so anyway, the National Board of Review has released their best films of the year and their awards. And Moonlight and Manchester by the Sea continue to have tremendous momentum. Not huge momentum, I guess you could say, because the National Board of Review, their choices often don't line up with what ultimately takes home the Oscar. But their choices here are very interesting. So Moonlight took Best Director and Best Supporting Actress for Naomi Harris. And then Manchester by the Sea took Best Film, Best Actor for Casey Affleck, another win for him. Also, we discussed his sexual harassment case in the past. And he actually has hired, one of you sent me an article that he has hired a PR team to tackle that head on as that story resurfaces in light of his awards momentum. Let's see how he can handle it and if he takes advice a little bit better than Nate Parker. As many of you pointed out, it's a different situation. He was never, found guilty of anything. That woman is still, she did not take her own life, and actually I believe there was a settlement. And he countersued. So he's been very aggressive about fighting back on this, and so we'll see if those moves help him. But Manchester by the Sea also took original screenplay. The other awards went to Best Ensemble, Hidden Figures. Fascinating to see that on the board. Kubo, Animated. Best Actress, Amy Adams for Arrival. Looks like she picked the right horse. It was between that and Nocturnal Animals for her. Supporting Actor, Jeff Bridges for Hell or High Water. How fascinating to see that movie having some momentum, especially because Jeff Bridges won all those awards for Crazy Heart a couple of years ago. So he's taken care of. They try to be pretty democratic with giving out the awards. And then for Best Adapted Screenplay, Silence by Martin Scorsese and Jay Cox, that screenplay. We're going to talk about Silence for the third story. And then for the top films of the year, Arrival, Hacksaw Ridge, that's interesting, Hail Caesar, Hell or High Water, again, Hidden Figures, La La Land, interestingly, no actual single awards for La La Land. I wonder if that's troubling. Moonlight, Patriots Day, interesting to see that on board there. Silence, and Sully. So it also is fascinating to not see Fences anywhere here. Maybe it wasn't screened for the National Board of Review, but that is a big surprise. So that's how the Oscar race continues to take shape, but those Golden Globe nominations on the 12th will be incredibly influential. Now let's talk about Silence. I'm surprised about Silence. It's come out of nowhere as a movie, with the trailer being released right before the Thanksgiving weekend. And it has very strong support from the Christian community, shockingly strong support from the Christian community, something I had not anticipated. But clearly, Paramount has, because they are setting themselves up for that type of campaign. And you might see a Passion of the Christ, American Sniper kind of situation take shape with this film, both in terms of strong box office appeal and maybe some support from the awards circuit. So what is Paramount doing? Well, they've set up a meeting with Martin Scorsese to meet with Pope Francis, actually today. It might have actually already happened considering the time difference. And they're really going to play up the fact that Scorsese is a Catholic himself, and this has been a passion project for him for 27 years. You better believe that's the narrative they're going with when he does all of his talks and all of his interviews. He's going to be playing up his own Catholicism, and I think that's a great Oscar narrative. I think that's a really strong way to go. But I do have I'm curious to see how the actual film turns out. As many of you have pointed out, it's written by a Japanese author, but the leads are Portuguese Jesuit missionaries in Japan, and the persecution of those who would seek to worship Christianity during that time period. A dark chapter in Japanese history. And I can understand that people really want to put a spotlight on missionaries, and I think that's an exemplary thing to do. Certainly a different direction than the Book of Mormon, right? But the Book of Mormon kind of made fun of maybe sometimes the short-sightedness of missionaries and the single-mindedness, and also seeing, the question is, when Christian missionaries go to other countries, do they see the people they're trying to bring over to Christianity as people, or, just, commodities to be found for converting people to Christianity, right? And I say that very respectfully because I think that by not having any major Japanese characters in the movie, and who knows what the Japanese author was thinking? Perhaps he felt this book wouldn't sell, If he had Japanese leads, he wanted it to be like a very successful book, which it clearly is. Many of you seem to be quite familiar with it. But I think it's something that maybe Martin Scorsese and Jay Cox would have maybe wanted to fix. Although they did win Best Adapted Screenplay, so maybe they're doing great. But I just think that it's really important to point out the risk and the bravery of those individuals in Japan who risked their own lives, and in some cases lost their lives, because they believed in Jesus Christ. I think that's really important, and I think it's dangerous to portray them not with any personality, or to take, I think the Jesuit missionaries are obviously very important, but I think it's important to shine a spotlight on both sides of the equation. But we'll see how the actual film plays out. But I'm curious, what do you think of Silence as a strong contender with this strong religious support? What do you think of Paramount's awards Oscar campaign that's taking shape quite quickly? And how do you feel about stories about missionaries? Do you feel that the people they're trying to convert are an important part of the story? All right, so let's go to the viewer question. This is from David Miller. David Miller says, Grace Meister, I love it. A question for you. Do you think the success of comic book movies in general, and Marvel's in particular, has changed the way actors and actors' agents do business in Hollywood? That's a great question. I think that there's always, the business is always changing, and we've come a long way from the studio system. Right now, Hollywood's all about packaging through the agencies. You bring up agents. Often you'll see that a film will have all the same actors, and often the key behind the camera talent, like director, writer, all from the same agency. What packaging means, they'll put it together and bring it to the studio already set and say, that's one of the reasons that agents can recruit certain talent, because they say, look at all the other people that we have, we can put you in projects with those individuals. And also why they want to get a great roster, so they have the ability to package. But I think in terms of content, I think that two things have really changed the business. Comic book movies, because there are just so many of them, and they're so popular that it's kind of like, if you don't have one, what's the matter with you, right? Why can't you get a comic book role? And also it boosts your profile so significantly. It helps the other projects that you work on. It's just, I think, and I also think there's no longer a stigma attached to being part of the comic book franchise. And then look at all the Oscar winners that are in there, right? But then also I think that television is the other big game changer. I think not only because of the quality of the work, but the paychecks that are being handed out. So I think that and I think that if they shorten that window, it's going to change the business even more. Because there used to be a real feeling of a difference between the size screen that you appeared on regularly as an actor. Are you a movie actor or are you a television actor? And we might be getting to that point that many of you have wanted to see for so long, where it's just, what kind of an actor are you? That's very exciting. And I think that people like Netflix are also leading the charge in their ability to create 8-hour movies. That's give you more time to tell the story. And when there's 8-hour movies, how do 2-hour movies compete with that? It's tough. It's a scary time for the business, but it's also an exciting time and a heck of a lot of money to be made, particularly for name talent, because name talent is needed to stand out in the very crowded slate. So a lot of money being made. We'll see where everything settles, where everything is once the dust settles. But I do agree that comic book movies are changing the business and television. But thank you for your question, David. I hope that clarified it a little bit. I'm very curious to hear everybody's thoughts today on the top 3 stories and David's viewer question. Anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.